Welcome back to Scriptural Focus. This week we're talking one of the more popular arguments in recent years as our culture has grown more feminist. The leanings of some in the church have grown more egalitarian, leaning towards women preachers or deaconesses or whatever role they can kind of open up to open that door a little bit. Of course, we're pretty strongly on male leadership, male preachers, and all those things. But one of the things they will bring up is a few references that Paul makes, and we can find all of them actually in Romans chapter 16, to women in the church and roles they may have had. When we look at Romans 16, you look at verse 1, it says, I commend to you our sister Phoebe, who is a servant of the church which is at Cenchrea, that you receive her in the Lord in a manner worthy of the saints, and that you help her in whatever manner she may have need of you, for she herself has also been a helper for many, and of myself as well. Greet Priscilla and Aquila, my fellow workers in Christ Jesus. And then you drop to verse 7. Greet Andronicus and Junius, my kinsmen and my fellow prisoners, who are outstanding among the apostles, who also were in Christ before me. You have three names there that are often drawn on in this argumentation. You have Phoebe, you have Prisca here, but we know that's a shorthand for Priscilla, who we see in the book of Acts, who helps with Apollos. When Apollos is teaching slightly off, it says Priscilla and Aquila took him aside and taught him the way of Christ more perfectly. In Acts chapter, I want to say 18. Here in verse 7 as well. Interestingly, my New American Standard says, greet Andronicus and Junius. I'm going to read from the New King James. It says, greet Andronicus and Junia, my countrymen and fellow prisoners, who are of note among the apostles, who also were in Christ before me. Junius is a male name. Junia is a female name. There is dispute among the textual variants as to which one that may be. Some claim that A, this was a woman named Junia, which again, it may be or may not be. But B, when it says, my New American Standard says, well, these two are outstanding among the apostles, the other says known or of note among the apostles, some claim that this means that Junia was listed among the apostles, and this Andronicus as well. So not only did you have the 11 apostles, and then Matthias added on, and then Paul, the last apostle, but that Andronicus and Junia, this woman, was also one of the apostles. I'm going to try and be respectful, but there's a degree to which it's, all right, come on, how on earth do we have this person who is mentioned, we're not even sure if it is a woman, mentioned as of note or known among the apostles, that this is one of the apostles, and there were actually 16 apostles of the early church. And then, of course, you see with Phoebe, that it says it was a servant of the church at Cenchrea, that it comes from the Greek word, that servant is from the diakonos, the female version of that, and so they would say deacon, deaconess. She was a deaconess of the church. And then, of course, Priscilla is listed first among Priscilla and Aquila, and so she was taking the lead in teaching Apollos, or the claims that are made here. So let's look at these in order. Phoebe was a servant, maybe a deaconess. That is the Greek word, but this is a Greek word that is translated specifically in different ways throughout the New Testament. Servant is a very common word in the New Testament. Most of the time it is translated servant, and even when it's translated deacon, you could translate it as servant. Why we have set it apart in Acts 6, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, is because it does seem to be describing someone specific. They picked the 7 deacons in Acts chapter 6 as people specifically, these men specifically for this role of helping out with this distribution of bread. That was a job that they alone had. Now everybody in the church, you could say, well, everybody in the church is a servant. They are, but these were specific servants for a specific role. How we distinguish that in English is we change that servant to deacon. When you go to 1 Timothy 3 and there's the qualifications for elders and then some given for deacons, well, again, you could say, well, everybody in the church is a servant, so these are for everybody. Well, no, they're not. He's talking about a specific person, and so what we call the office of the deacon is a separate thing. However, when Paul calls himself a servant, or there's that term servant, servants and your masters, even Romans 13 talks about government as a servant or a minister of God. It's a deacon of God. And so it's this same word, it's only translated deacon in those times when it's talking about the office. And so this claim that she is a deacon of the church or a deaconess of the church at Cenchrea, it's a stretch. Why on earth would she be the only mention we have? We don't have qualifications for deaconesses. We don't have any instance of deaconesses anywhere else. In Acts chapter 6, they had every opportunity to name a woman among the 7 they chose, but they didn't. And so why all of that context says this should probably just be servant in the generic sense of the word and not in the office sense of the word. You look at Priscilla and Aquila, she is listed first. She was involved in correcting Apollos. This does not make her a preacher. This does not make her a teacher. We've all known those husband and wife couples that work really well in the work of the church. That's what we see with Priscilla and Aquila. You see their names put together every time. You see Paul list Priscilla every time. With this, people have often taken it to make Aquila just kind of this wimpy guy hanging out in his wife's shadow. I don't think that was Paul's intention at all. This is just a couple that is always seen working together for the good of the church. And then finally, the idea of Junia or Junius, known among the apostles, and some would say listed as one of the apostles, that's simply not what it says. And again, the idea that we had these hidden secret apostles, well, you get into the Greek words again. Apostle, apostolos, that's just one scent. And in the same sense as deacon, this is a word that's used throughout the New Testament, but only is translated apostle when specifically talking to when it's talking about this list of people. And so known among the apostles, listed among the apostles, that may very well be the apostles in Jerusalem, or the 12 apostles, Paul and the other 12, that she's known among them, means that they commend her work, that she is familiar to them, that she has worked alongside them. That's all that has to mean. If he wanted to say she was one of the apostles, that he was perfectly capable of doing that. He did not say that. And so we get into these word games, and here's the other thing. You have this person mentioned once. You have Phoebe mentioned here. You've got Priscilla a few times. You have 12 male apostles, and then, of course, Matthias, and then Paul. So 14 times. 14 for 14 were men. You have the deacons, the 7 deacons of Acts chapter 6. 7 times it was men. You have qualifications for elders in 1 Timothy and in Titus. Clearly speaking about men every time. Every preacher of the church we see were men. And so this idea of, well, we found this one time, and this one lady shows that it was totally normal for them to have. That's just not how these things work. In the same sense of Deborah was the one female judge. Absolutely, she was. And the point of that story is that all the men in Israel were too weak and weren't standing up and doing their job. And she was trying to get men to go do their job because they wouldn't do it. When you point to the exception to make a rule, it's just bad hermeneutics. And so when we look at Romans 16 and we see these women listed, number one, it doesn't mean what they're saying it does. Number two, you don't make a rule out of a slight exception, even if it were an exception, which we have every reason to believe it's not. And so these are some stretches that are out there that you're going to hear from time to time. I don't think we need to take anything from these. It's just bad ideology, bad Bible study, bad hermeneutics, and something we don't have to accept. That's this week's Scriptural Focus. As always, any questions for future episodes, leave them in the comments, and we'll talk to you next week.